We'd like to thank the Gulf Coast Community Foundation for its continual support and being our top sponsor. And it's my pleasure now to introduce our keynote sponsor speaker, another one of my favorite people in Sarasota who has saved my butt many a time when I was working on a story, John Thaxton from the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, who will give the sponsor address.
Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege and an honor to be here this evening, this afternoon, this morning, whatever it is. I have a 14-hour day ahead of me, so I'm trying to think long-term here. Gulf Coast has been a sponsor of this event, I think, every year. I have had the opportunity to address the crowd also almost every year. And today, I want to talk about open space, agriculture, and environmentally sensitive lands with regards to sustainability, both then, now, and for the next 20 years. For those of you that have seen my presentation on my 45-year career of land planning in Sarasota, you might remember I start that presentation with a family photo. It was a family photo where my grandmother was 2 years old. My great-grandfather was the senior of the family. And if you look very closely in the photograph, you'll notice that they're standing in front of a barbed wire fence. And they were standing at my family's home just south of what is today Bay Vista Street. And I say that because that was the end of town. That's why the barbed wire fence was there. The barbed wire fence was there at Shade Avenue to prevent the cattle from going into the downtown area. And every generation of my family and other families that have been here ever since have seen this eastern progression of this suburban growth more and more and more and more. And we're told that, well, you know, growth is inevitable. There's nothing that you can do about it. It's just something that has to happen. Well, at a very young age, in high school, I started to question this so-called logic, this inevitability. And that is what motivated me to get involved in environmental conservation. We've had this battle on many different fronts. I can remember a time where I-75 was considered the urban service area boundary. And we had the planning board, the Board of County Commissioners, promise the residents of Sarasota County that there would never be any growth, any urban growth east of I-75, forever, in perpetuity. And then, of course, there was the disastrous 2050 plan where we paved the way and literally financed the destruction of our agricultural lands, our open space, and our natural areas. So we learned, or at least I learned, that there's nothing that a Board of County Commissioners can do that cannot be undone by a future Board of County Commissioners. And the only way that we're going to be able to preserve these agricultural lands, these open space, and these environmentally sensitive areas is by removing the development rights from them through acquisition or other ways. So we have this battle, we have this race going on between those of us that want to preserve as much of Sarasota's open space lands as we can, and those that would prefer to convert those lands into 3.5 unit per acre residential subdivisions. And today we are in the last leg of that race. And with any race, it's always important to kind of know where the finish line is, right? So you can pace yourself and have a strategy. So I started asking the question, in Sarasota County, how much land do we actually have left? How much land have we not committed to either preservation or to development? And where are those lands? And nobody could answer that question, and I found that very frustrating, and so I sought the answer myself. And the conclusion is 10%. We have committed for development or preserved 90% of Sarasota County's land. So I want to get back to this growth is inevitable mantra that I've heard my entire life. I would agree that economic growth, spiritual growth, and social growth are inevitable. But consuming open space land for residential subdivisions is not inevitable because we see now that we are truly running out of land. We are bumping up against the borders of Sarasota County. It reminds me, back in the 80s, the developers and many of the planners would say, we don't have to worry about preserving the lands in eastern Sarasota County because there's so much of it. We will never be building out in that area simply because of the vastness. So I want you to look around you today, because the people sitting next to you are indeed, and for certain, the last generation of Sarasotans to have the opportunity to preserve this critical, rare, and endangered open space. You heard Commissioner Smith talk about 34% of Sarasota County's land being preserved, and that's good. We've had many generations, including the Palmers, the Longinos, the Carltons, the Jelks, that have worked to make this a reality. But I also had a friend named Bob Richardson, and Bob Richardson said that we need to preserve 50% of Sarasota County land and then develop the remaining 50%. I would suggest that 34% is not enough. We need closer to 40%, and we have one final chance to make that happen. In November of 2026, we are going to be asking the voters to extend, again for another 20 years, the Environmentally Sensitive Lands Program. This is a program that preserves the open space, preserves our agricultural heritage, and preserves habitat for threatened and endangered species. It is a program that has been proven, the community likes it, it's transparent, and it works. So, in closing, our theme is then, now, in the next 20 years. But with regards to preserving our open space, ag lands, and environmental lands, it's not the next 20 years, it's the last 20 years. So I would encourage you to educate yourself, become involved, become engaged, and advocate for the passing of this referendum over the next year. Thank you for your attention and for the opportunity to sponsor.